experience and I've chatted with at different points, and I thank you very much. Mostly and tremendously, I thank the good ladies at the archive, because they've been very patient with me and allowed me a lot of leeway in certain ways and a huge amount of help. So they're very generous. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes first, and we're going to travel just a few little places around Montana. Think of it as a rock skipping across Montana history. And I want to show you that in a sense, really, back in the late 1880s and early 1890s, almost all roads led to Butte. And after that, we'll dive into Butte proper. So I've been experimenting the last couple of years with some ways to time travel. And it's a physical fact that you really can't, you can travel across physical distance, but you can't travel across time. However, I think you'll find that after this little bit of experimentation that there are ways, at least in small form, to travel across time. And I think Butte is really almost a perfect place to do this because the past always seems so close. It's as if you can reach out and touch it in place after place. We often say things like, if only these walls could speak. And I'm going to show you a way to listen to the walls speaking.
It's the one with the little knob on it, right above the star.
Nope. Okay, Fort Benton. We're going to the north first. So this is the levee at Fort Benton. Interesting thing is the late 1880s. You know that Fort Benton was a main freight route all the way up the Missouri into the center of Montana. Interesting thing, if you look at this picture here, this is the levee where the steamships unloaded. And so, smokestack. More smokestacks, big driving wheel for a belt, probably for a big belt, probably a steam engine at this time for a crushing mill. These right here, as Larry Hoffman has helped me, they're concentrating tables for gravity separation of crushed ore. Right, here's a roll of steel cable. Here's 2 boilers. These are challenge ore feeders for feeding ore into a stamp mill. What we have right here are, you might think perhaps they're whiskey barrels, but no whiskey barrels, no barrels with whiskey would ever be haphazardly thrown in like that. Treated like gold, precious. So as Larry suggests, these are probably nails, spikes, or other small objects like this. What we have in this whole area here is mining equipment. And so it's uncertain as to whether this is going to Butte. There were a lot of other places right in the 1880s which had started hard rock mining. But there's a possibility here, and certainly from the north, Butte gained certain things. So here's what it looks like now. We're going to fade into the present. That's where you were on the levee. So the idea, you have to actually get in exactly the same place. And the problem with the levee is that you'll see these masonry walls, they raise the entire levee by about 15 feet. So no perspective that you get down here is the same as any of the historical photos. It's just a practicality. It's something that you stumble across with a lot of frustration. Okay, so from the south, this is Point of Rocks, where Sacagawea pointed west, Lewis and Clark. This is the way to cross the mountains and get to the rivers and the headwaters of the Columbia on the other side. So it's been a wetlands area since 1997. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, they dozed up this stuff. They drove a ditch to the beaver head, which is right behind these trees right on the side. It was right in between this promontory rock and the Point of Rocks. So this also is the route for the Corrigan Trail, coming up from Corrigan, Utah, the Transatlantic Union Pacific Railroad, the nearest place for the railroad to come. So freight wagons are coming up and going down. People are going to Bannock, Alder Gulch, Virginia City, and to Butte, to Deer Lodge. So let's turn the clock back a little bit. It's also a wide place on the Beaver Head, the big wide sandbar where there was a stagecoach station. This is the same stagecoach station that Marcus Daly came up to check out for the Walker Brothers, to check out the Alice Mill, and went back down, and Butte history is starting to unfold. There are all these threads that move through our environment all the time. They're always there. We're not aware of most of them. This method allows you to see a few of those threads from a tiny, specific little portal that allows you to transfer and move across time. From the east, this is the Northern Pacific Depot in Miles City. I mean, it's hard for people to understand. I mean, for all of us, we hop in our cars, we go 80, 85. If you've got a radar detector or you're gambling a little bit, you go faster and faster. So it's really easy with our modern conveyances to jump in our car and move across the state in almost no time. That's not the case. Sometimes it's really difficult to think back at how incredibly important the railroads were. This is a dilapidated depot, right? It's condemned. But watch, there was a time through the late 1800s, early 1900s, when these places funneled tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. The vitality, the life that's there. So, from the west, this is the Blackfoot River, right outside, just upstream from Missoula. It's the Bonner Mill is right around the corner here. So, huge portion of the timbers that timbered up Butte mines came from the western mountains in around the Blackfoot. So, of course, this is the era when they were doing this before logging trucks and decent roads. They did have a spur railroad, but they loaded it up really quickly. How did they get the logs down? Well, they flumed them down at high water as the floods came, and they stacked up 40 or 50 feet deep right along and into the mill area. All of those are going to be cut up, and they're all underground in the Butte mines. All roads, or almost all, lead to Butte. Some of the roads lead to Anaconda from Butte, right? So this is the upper works in 1883, 84. It's probably maybe 1885 after it was really going, burned down once and rebuilt. So you're looking due east, really, from the start of the walking path there at the upper works. Of course, this was built by Marcus Daly because there's water there, and everybody was vying for their 10 or 12 reduction plants in Butte proper, but they're all fighting for the very limited amount of water. So Daly goes over there. He has Warm Springs Creek after he bends a lot of arms and pays a lot of money, and you get the greatest metallurgical project in the world right here. Okay, soon to be torn down, only lasts a little over 15 years. You can see the smokestacks and the flues for the lower works there on the other end. So watch. Again, if you stand in the right place and look in the right way, the walls speak to you, and so does the outer doors. Exact same place. You can see the flues, you know, these funny bobsled-like run masonry things going up the hill. Suddenly they make perfect sense. They're just inclined chimneys. So I think it's hard for people to get their head around. I mean, even people I think who grew up here, especially younger people, but certainly people from outside, to get your head around the fact that there were 80, 90, 100,000 plus people living in this place. It's really, really, you see the relics. You see kind of the tattered relics. But to actually get your head around and feel yourself into those, that population and the vitality, the busyness, the explosiveness. So, come on, let's head up to West Copper and look down. We'll just step in behind these dapper young guys on the boardwalk as they're headed into the upper part of Uptown. It's a Butte of about 1908 or so. So, question, what makes a city? You know, we know the story of mining. What does it look like, really, and how does the land change? Well, you see all this and stuff, but it's all spread out over our lifetimes. There are all these incredible changes, and we see some of them photographically, but almost never are we standing in the place where that photographer set up and took that picture to capture a particular thing. So, how does a city really grow? The neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, residents, and the mines. What does it grow from? It can grow from nothing, as long as there's something there. In this case, richest hill on earth. A lot of beliefs, a lot of wishes, a lot of opportunity, and a lot of very, very motivated people. So Butte started off, as a gold mining camp, ramped up with the gold rush, and then crashed, right? So this says 1875, but apparently Murray redated this photo about 1872. Okay, it's right after the very short-lived gold rush. You're looking down. Where are you looking? Well, the larger little boarding house there, it's also the stagecoach station, is on Broadway and Main. Main's running right up that little ridge there. We're right about the level of Copper, a little higher. I tried to reshoot this, and I have, but it's not helpful because you're looking down now into the core part of Uptown with all the buildings, even with the ones that unfortunately were left, were victims of arson. You're looking right down in the middle of the Uptown. Remember where there's in the census 1910 or so says there's 60,000 people in 42 blocks. Do the math, roughly 1,400 people per block. And so you can never get this perspective again because it's filled with buildings that came in the meantime. But how does a city grow? Here's it when it's really a town. It's already started. It's probably 1880 or so. And so now you have a town. You have a nice sized thing. You're not looking at the mines, but you know kind of the names. Most of you have at least some of the prominent ones. And so you're right up at what was called then, and to a fair degree more recently, Little Butte, right? You're right at the top of Idaho Street and Copper. We're just a few, maybe 50 feet up or less from where those two guys were walking on the boardwalk about 20 years later. Okay, we'll take one part of that photograph, and I'll show you what it means. When you shoot down at this, okay, so that's the Methodist church that's over on the other side here. This area here is where the courthouse is, right? You're looking straight into Uptown, and here's what it looks like now. Right next to Bill Shaw's house. Again, you see the buildings that are there. I can match this building up perfectly with something that went in probably about 10 years later. It's very, very difficult in the midst of all this. There's so much change. Of course, the courthouse is ripped down. All the buildings in back, the jail, you can see a jail here, right? Some of the buildings that came in at certain times you can match up. But a city is built historically by layer after layer. Somebody has a vision of one part of it. They build a beautiful building. They change the building. They start with a Hennessy building here. They move it over here. Anaconda comes in on the 6th floor. They take it over, right? And they have this magnificent view up on the hill, and they can do semaphore to their guys up on the head frames, and they don't even need, but eventually they have a telephone. So there are all these different things, and so when you're immersed in this and trying to match up these photographs, it's very, very difficult. Oftentimes it's just bewildering, right? So you have to have a certain kind of obsessiveness to say, God, is the photograph reversed? Sometimes they are, and that will really put a swivel on your head. Okay, so this is the left part of that. We're looking right down Idaho Street at Timber Butte. Again, the church is there. This was taken probably, it's not quite at the same time, but very close. The light's not quite the same, so it wasn't taken right sequentially. So here we are looking at Idaho, right here. Copper King Mansion comes out of nowhere. I especially like this one. A lot of these you have to go back and forth, and I make them into videos so that I can stop them at any given point. It's like having X-ray vision across time. And you decide how much of that time, how much of this time you want to see, right? And so when you do that, you see the gradation, suddenly you all see all kinds of other things. But that's a product for more study. I'm just trying to give you this rock-skipping idea of Butte history seen in this way. Okay, so what happens when the Uptown is really getting built? It's built up and so, but you tear down a building, and lo and behold, on the bedrock right there, you have a rich copper vein right at the surface. What do? Well, you build a mine, for God's sake, it's Butte. So this is a smokehouse mine, right? And here's the Thornton building. And when I retake this picture, of course it wasn't here, this picture's taken about 1900, so the Finlen as it exists now is not there. But you have to find the spot, so I'm actually right about in the alley. And one of the problems with this method is that if you're 6 inches off, or you're a little too low or a little too high, it won't work, the magic will not be there. You can make it match up in one place and one place only. And the rest of the picture will gradually dissipate into other things. It's just the technical quality that as you move through your normal space, this is always true, but it's especially true when you're constrained by time. Every single tiny movement is constrained and changes every single perspective line to everything that you're connected with, everything you see around you. And then this is the photographic version of that, and it's nuts. So, of course, you make a mine in Uptown. You sink a shaft 2,000 feet, right? Where do you put the waste? Well, there are lots of problems with this. So, eventually, somebody tears down the mine. They use 60 cement truck loads to fill it up, the shaft. But in the meantime, let's look at the X-ray vision across the Anaconda bar and the sushi shop. So that's what happens when you find the exact same place that that photograph was taken. You can see through the building. So, you know, there's a time when roads didn't go everywhere, maybe there were paths, but up on Excelsior, right, the extension of Excelsior around the corner into Walkerville, there was no road, there was just a trolley line, right? But you can go right up on West Daly and look back down exactly along the trolley line as it moved through this desolate area through here and into Walkerville proper, all 5,000 people live in it. So watch. Right in here comes the ghost of the trolley. It's riding on the lines. It's now joining with the cars on the road, and now the road's disappearing, and the trolley is ascending. Exactly the same place. Magic happens. You see and feel across time. Wall Street, right next to Clark Park. Some shots just kind of leap up, right? It's hard to believe, hard to remember how busy the place was. Wow. You know, you must have, I don't know, maybe 400 or 500 guys getting on the trolley here, right? Where are they going? Well, all over the place. A lot of them up the hill, a lot of them elsewhere. So, if you retake that shot, you match up the hills in the background, you match up the angles, you see now and get a feel for what's missing. It's astonishing, you cannot get your head around it. The vibrancy, the life, the explosive life that was here. Of course, all the football games, forever and ever. Clark Park, 1920. Look at that guy's face. You know, these guys are going for it. They're going full bore for it, right? These are Butte guys. Now I got to get any graph from anybody.
Where's your face mask?
They're right there. If you go to Clark Park, you can feel them.
On the ice rink.
So the alley right next to Main Hall, right, and the jail. So it's still one of these great old buildings, you know, that still retains its flair and stuff, has a nice new coating, right? You can feel those walls, great light on the photos in the alley. It's also the place where we've got the detectives from the Butte Police Department standing there right next to Main Hall. You can see them coming out. They're still there, if you know where to look. You can go and stand in any of their footsteps. Right? One of them is Ed Morrissey. I haven't been able to match faces up with specific people yet. One of them is Ed Morrissey, though, who is, of course, one of the many people blamed for Frank Little's lynching, and a whole host of other Butte lore. Our wonderful archives. Fire station number 1. Who would not want to go back when it was a fire station? Right on Court Street, right next to the Murray Hospital and the boarding houses. With 4 horse-drawn
That's great.
fire engines coming out. So one thing I really like is the details oftentimes, they're just so poignant. Look at this, 3 nurses up in the corner turret of the Murray Hospital. There's actually another one right over here. It's my favorite shot of Lady of the Line. Not just because she's beautiful, not because she's in a negligee. Look at her face. This is true for me, I can only say from coming from outside Butte. There are a lot of people on the outside of Butte that say, all the ladies and all these prostitutes, whatever you want to call them, and all the minors, they're victims. They're victims of terrible circumstances. I'm sure some were. I'm positive some were. But I've talked with a certain number of miners, mining engineers, I've talked with other ladies, I've talked with a lot of people, and not one of them sees life as a victim. And her face says, don't give me any crap, because I'm gonna punch you out if you do. So now, she kind of takes up the whole frame of the thing, but look at the background. It's a Finlen being built. We can date this, it's 1923. I've worked out the angle. She's on the top of one of the 2 saloons that were right next to the Rialto. Right? Also, you can, those of you who are a little older can also recognize that, shiners. You can match this up perfectly by the angles. You can't go up there, though. You'll be levitating in air. Otherwise, I would have tried to reshoot this. I don't think they'd let me up there, though, in a negligee. The Finlen, beautiful place, wonderful spot. You know, it's really, you know, a landmark for many, many reasons. And, you know, in 1923, they're building it using a modern system steel beam framework and concrete. Now watch as it takes shape before your eyes. Can't you feel the steel beams that are there? Now, from the top of the Finlen, there's several fantastic portrait or panoramas that were taken. So my wife and I stay in Finland a fair amount when we're over here, and talked with the maintenance guy Jim and a few of the other people, and he allowed me to reshoot some stuff up on the top roof. So there's a classic view of the hill, right? And so for the longest time, I'm just totally focused up here, right? You know, you've got the Never Sweat, you've got the high ore up here, you've got the Parrot right here, which is still there. This is an anchor point for the photos. You've got Washington School, which is now just a parking lot. Okay, and then so you can just march. Here's the mountain view, the Anaconda, the Never Sweat, and then out here, the moonlight and the Pennsylvania, right? So but you guys know, you drive out here and bam, you run into the berm. And then if you ran it over the berm because you were going fast enough and your car went through the fence, of course, then you'd be airborne for about 500 feet, you know, falling down into the pit, to water ski, as they say. So here's what it looks like. And I'm going to do it again. The pit's appearing. The Pennsylvania is sitting out, floating. Moonlight is just across the berm, and everything else except the Parrot. You can still see the smokestacks of the high ore of the Never Sweat. Washington School. I'm going to go back just because there's so much going on. This is one of the things you have to be really careful of. Is when you retake shots that have a wide range of things in it, there's just so much going on that you just kind of gaze at it dumbfoundedly. And I can't show you all the different things. I'd have to isolate them. But let's just look. So here's the berm, right? So we're coming out here. Here's Broadway. Here's Quartz, right, coming around. So whole neighborhood. Yeah, sorry. Whole neighborhood. You know, and all these neighborhoods, the school, and then everything out here. So let's go back. I don't have these as videos on here because they just get huge. And the software really can't handle it. So watch, here's the moonlight. It's right there on the berm. So when you go right out to the corner there, just look up because you'll be looking right into the moonlight. If you can make it over the burn and keep going, you'll be right in the middle of Pennsylvania. I'm going to go back.
Look how short the Butte Hill gets.
Yep.
We call the Butte Hill, but it's not much of a hill anymore because the Berkeley pit brought the top of that hill down. So the mountains in the background, you'll see how the hill shrinks and you can see all of the mountains, which you couldn't see when it was really the Butte Hill.
Yeah, I'll show. I'm going to show a shot in just a minute where you're back up, right just above the high ore, looking down, looking to the south. And you will then feel how much of a big bite that mine took. Meanwhile, we're up at the diamond. Okay, Visitors Day. I love this picture for quite a variety of reasons. One is the guy who introduced my wife and I to Butte personally was Duke Crowley. He was a street kid, grew up in the 20s and 30s here, went into the military. Then he became probably the most influential lawyer in Montana history. He, under Forrest Anderson, he was under 3 different governors because he was so damn good. And he redid Montana civil, the criminal code. He restructured Montana government into its current form. I think he redid or developed the Office of Public Defender. He headed the prison commissions when there was horrendous riots in the 50s. And then he taught every single lawyer that came out of Montana for 40 years. And this is exactly what he did. He lived at 15 Lexington Terrace. There's no house there anymore. It's right next to the, you're looking right up at the Lexington head frame. This is how his job heated his family home. He went out with a makeshift little wheelbarrow, went across the Cora mine dump to pick out any broken wood, old shreds of timber and lagging board to bring home so they could cook, and they could heat the house, and it was 35 below up there at 6,500 feet. So watch. We got all these beautiful, I mean, how would you like to go down in a mine with your wonderful feathered hat and your long dress and, you know. So watch. The head frame starts popping out. Everything else starts disappearing. When you see that, you realize how integral the mines were, how many people were involved, how they were part of everybody's life. The scale, right? The size, you had never had any idea it was that big. And the desolation, when it's all capped off, there's nothing going on underground anymore. This is the first fade I ever did, was for my Speculator disaster story. I got very, very interested. It's like, how can I show what this yard was like? It was the North Butte Company basically was an Apollo project for mining. They were way ahead of the Anaconda Company. They were doing everything at this absolute pioneering level. And so how do you even show that? I mean, it's wonderful that we still have the head frame there. So watch. It's all desolate. It's half buried by Berkeley pit waste. But what's under it? If you take away 100 years, you take away the millions of tons of rock, what's there? The biggest, most productive mine in the world at the time. 1,200 guys going underground every day. Right? See the fence here? It just keeps continuing here, and I'll show you the Speculator in a second. Yeah, incredible stuff going on here. They had, at times, 700 or 800 people working on top, on the surface, because so much was going on. So this is the extension. If we had another screen and another projector, we'd put it right there. And so this is the extension. This is the same mine yard fence. A lot of people, in my experience, don't really know where the Speculator was. The older people do, because they remember, well, there's a head frame right out there. If you're standing up at the memorial, you're looking down out to the southeast, you're looking, there's a flat area there. And all you can really see is a remnant of these tracks. And some other stuff. It's a big flat area. Okay, you're looking down the hill, you're looking all the way out into East Butte and Sarsfield and the various mines that are out there. You know, you can date this photograph 1916. There's one guy in it. He's right there. Look at those stacks of timber. They're 35 feet high at least. And there's how many? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this stuff. My God. So this is what it looks like.
It's amazing how you can do that.
So the head frame and the shaft were just beyond this little shed here. If I did this, I can't do it now, but if I did it in slow motion with a video, I can stop it and you'll see that those box cars are lined up right on the tracks. The building that was right here, ore bins for 3 other small mines that were just up the hill a little bit. Norton Braley and the manager of Speculator Mine just had his house just up the hillside about maybe 60 yards or so, and the foundation is still there. You can just make it out. So these are, this is for mixing the ammonium hydrate with the diesel for blowing, you know, a section in the Berkeley pit still left there. And so, but it's not part of the actual mine. So I'm just going to run back a little bit because it's almost impossible to fathom how busy and condensed the Speculator mine yard was when the North Butte took over and just poured everything into it. It's amazing, no matter what angle. What I'm trying to do is retake these things, make a 3-dimensional image of the thing that we can move through. That's where I'm headed with this stuff. So we can actually feel, we can actually experience this other time. Okay, so Irene was talking about looking up and how much the pit had lowered the hill. This is looking down. It took me quite a while to figure out this place. This is just part of a panorama from the Library of Congress taken in about 1912. And Tom Malloy helped me figure out where it was taken from, which was the farthest extension of the diamond waste dump. So we retook it. This is Anaconda Road. There's a few guys down here. The part of the extension of the photograph goes all the way around to the Bell Diamond. There's a wagon right here, and you can see the guys that are walking up Anaconda Road and some down. So this is the compressor house, this is the mountain view, this is the Parnell, this is the upper part of the Anaconda, and the high ore is just right here. At this era, you know, after they changed certain parts of the compressor house and whatnot, and the steam house, and moving into electricity, you know, you had a whole lot of changes. So watch this. You're looking down toward the southeast. Here comes our time. See the edge of the pit. It's floating out there 1,500 feet above the water. Again, that's what the pit did, right? So much life, so much work, how many millions of man hours and man years of incredibly hard labor and deaths and injuries took place in the open air.
Doug, you can still see the Parnell from the pit observation.
Yes, yeah, and if you, thanks for reminding me, if you come in on Shields and off, if you just keep looking at the wall, right down below where the Kelly is, you will see the Parnell, which was kept as a ventilation shaft, about halfway down the pit. And then if you look across the top, you know, about maybe 4 levels down, you can see the Modoc. And the pit ends right before the Speculator yard. If you know where to look from down below, you can see the Granite Mountain too. But yeah, it's really interesting to look up there and you can see the Parnell halfway up the hill. Of course, with this photo, it's on the other side of the hill. So this just took a gigantic gulp out of this mountain. Richest hill on earth is that. I find that picture incredibly poignant. You know. And this is, I screenshot just halfway through, so you can see the ghost of the compressor houses and the mountain view hanging out there in space. you can't get a sense for how much is gone, really, looking from below up. It's a totally different perspective. Okay, so Mountain Con had this great sledding hill here, you know, wonderful. You can almost just plant wheat, maybe, and put a grain thresher in there. But it's an interesting little hill there. I found the exact place that was photographed from, right next to Sherwood Forest. That is the timber slide. All those logs coming down the Blackfoot to the Bonner Mill and cut up into square set timbering and lagging boards and whatnot, they all, a big portion of them ended up right there. And this is the dry. Okay, the original, it's very difficult, you know, also some people come in and they go, well, you know, the hill doesn't look too bad, as long as you don't look at the pit. I actually like the pit. I actually find the whole thing absolutely fascinating. Larry turned me on to this because, you know, he looks down from his house and it's like, well, is it ugly? No. You're looking at the last 150 plus years of the best mining ever that absolutely created everything we have now. So you can lament, I'm an environmentalist, and I can lament loss of certain things, but you always have trade-offs, and this is what allows us to live our modern lives in the ways that we do, and I'm certain that no one would go back. So reclamation of the hill, a lot of people don't realize how much was reclamated. So this is the original, taken again just off of West Copper. It's a later shot, 60 shot, going into now. If Tom Malloy was here, I would thank him in the reclamation. Oh, there he is. All the wonderful reclamation people that actually made this into a beautiful place. Right? All the Butte people that worked hard to create, to take stuff that was all part of the vibrancy and take it, repurpose it. Right? Fantastic folk festival area. Just fantastic. There isn't another place like it. Downtown, Park and Main, looking up Main, north. Trolleys, this is maybe early 40s, late 30s. You can see the M&M right there. The street life, incredible, right? It's 1,500 people per block, 1,400 people per block walking or taking the trolley. Right? It's totally different now. People are out on the flats, not very many live in town, and you don't have the same means of travel. Martial law, 1914, this is a Gatling gun right out in front of the O'Rourke building, right behind, right next to the sheriff's department, and just kind of kitty corner from the current courthouse. And this guy's out there with the Gatling gun to intimidate would-be rioters. So this is happening, you know, they came in basically 2 days before the Speculator disaster. So this is another great fade from my standpoint because it lingers, it lingers. The guy is there. I watch as we come into the modern era and the boarding houses on the left disappear. And yet the lieutenant and his two lounging buddies with a Gatling gun are still standing there in front of the O'Rourke building. West Park, it's Hummingbird Cafe, the old Holler Bakery. My wife and I met the gal, she's the great-granddaughter of the Hollers who built it. She was born in the back of the building. And so West Park, really every street, but West Park is the main thoroughfare for all kinds of wonderful things, all kinds of wonderful parades, including Miners Union Day with the Pipe Fitters Union. Walking right up past the Holler Bakery. And if you give them any crap, they got a wrench. And they'll use it. This is a really poignant thing, okay? These are the newspaper boys for the Butte Miner. This shot, I had to reshoot this thing. I looked all over Uptown. It shouldn't be that hard, but it was. Which direction is it? Is it pointing east and west, or is it pointing the other way. What's there? You'd be amazed how similar the alleys look, and especially but finally, I was able to match up the windows in the back. They've been changed, but I saw that. Interesting thing about this picture, there's like 75 newspaper boys, and it's a big deal. Look at the guys in the windows. You know, these boys are great. The people back here, the people up here. Everybody knows, right? Look at the crutches.
Yeah.
Polio. Right, this was before the polio vaccine. Newspaper kids out there elbowing their way out, finding their place on the street. If you were lucky and you were tough, Park and Main. If you were less tough or maybe not quite as big, you'd find another spot. So watch. They're still standing there. Building's gone. The old Butte Minor is to the right. Just off the screen. Just that nice little alleyway. These are the windows. And they're some of them are bricked in, some of them are partially covered and whatnot, but I finally saw the right perspective and saw the spot. You know, and it's in some ways it's heart-rending. But at the same time, you know, it's like all these kids, you know, where'd they go? What'd they do? There's 75 of them, you know, or at least 75 families represented there. Some, you know, I mean, the kids with crutches, where did they go? What did they do with their lives? There begs all these questions, right? But they're people like us, and they made the best of it, like all Butte people do. Shift coming up from the mountain con. A little later, they've got headlamps, so it's, what, Larry, late 30s, early 40s?
Probably,
Yeah. But look at the faces. You got this guy in front with his gut hanging out, tough old guy. You got this kid right here, what's he, 18? You got this guy, maybe he's the foreman, I don't know. On and on and on, underneath the steel head frames. The head frame's still there. So we move back into the past, from the past into the future, into the now. Butte's filled with heroes. Butte's filled with survivors. Butte's filled with the best people in the world. Thank you.